Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Carolyn Talks. I'm your host, Carolyn Hines, film critic and journalist. And this is the podcast/YouTube channel where I speak to film creatives about their work, the industry, and what inspires them. And today, I'm joined by fellow film critic and journalist, Shanelle Genai. I paused. Shanelle Genai, to talk about the film Magazine Dreams, which premiered at the 2023 Sundance Film Festival. And this film stars Johnathan Majors. And I think I don't want to be hyperbolic, but I think it would be called a career defining role, because this is unlike anything we've seen him play today. And I think he was extremely impressive, fantastic, and also a bit scary in this role. And this film is about a man who has aspiring dreams and an obsession of becoming a world champion bodybuilder and body model. And it's scary, it's intense, it's unsettling. It was very unsettling. It was actually very physically uncomfortable for some of these films. And the film was written and directed by Elijah Bynum. And I think he has a very particular filming style, which helped make the story even more uncomfortable. But before we get into Magazine Dreams, as usual, I like to have my guests say a bit about themselves and what got them into their line of work. And for you, Shanelle, can you talk a bit about what got you into film criticism and journalism?
What got me into journalism in particular was a chance online meeting with a guy, an actor off Insecure, John Ellie. He played Amaldi on Insecure, Issa's little brother.
Mm-hmm.
We met on Instagram and kind of organically just connected. And, one day this was when I was thinking about kind of putting my feet out there as far as feature writing goes and doing interviews goes. And one day I just kind of pitched him and said, hey, I don't know if this will land anywhere, but I think you're an interesting person. I love what you're doing on Insecure. I'd love to interview you. If you give me the opportunity, I'll shop it around. I'll do a good job, et cetera, et cetera. He said, yes. It got published, and that was kind of the snowball effect for everything else. As far as film criticism, up until last year, I hadn't really tried my hand too much at it, simply because I highly respect people who do that on a regular basis. And I feel like it taps into some sort of mental and emotional places that I didn't know that necessarily I was ready to go to, as far as like analysis goes, and like trying to string things and themes and motifs and ideas together succinctly enough. But this in 2022, I really tried to challenge myself and get out the box. So that was the year I started doing more of those. And then here at Sundance in 2023, that's when I just kind of decided to work that muscle.
Yeah, it's like going into film criticism and journalism is a decision that I always tell people when they ask me, how did you get into this? I'm like, it's not a decision that you can make lightly, because especially as Black women, like this field of work can be very stressful, not only because the work itself is stressful. Like people always say, oh, your job is just to watch film. I'm like, my job, for me personally, my job isn't just about watching films. It's literally analyzing films. Like that's how when I'm writing a film for coverage for professional work, I watch it, yes, as a fan of film, but I'm also watching it because I have to analyze it. And I'm looking and I'm paying attention to the score, to the cinematography, costume design, all of these things. And that actually takes a lot of brain work, you gotta be able to like figure out what the director is trying to say, what the writer, all of these people, the cast is trying to say. And people always say, what's the first thing, what's the best advice you could give anyone? I always say, first thing first, stay true to yourself. Stay true to yourself. Know who your voice is as a writer. Know who your voice is as a critic, and as a Black woman, know who you are, because you have to know that this job is not easy. And when we step into this field, there's a lot of self-doubt. Like, as you said, like you weren't sure if you could do the writing. And for me, it was the same way. I hesitated even trying to do this job because I wasn't sure if I was a good enough writer. I didn't go to school for journalism. I didn't go to school for writing. I got my diploma in paralegal studies, and I decided to do this. And I knew people in the field who like went to film school, people who started out as actual like news journalists or editors and that kind of stuff. And I didn't have any kind of background in that. But like, I love that you took the initiative. You just like, you know what, I'm going to shoot my shot and try to interview this guy and shop it around. And like, that's, I think for a lot of us, like, that's when we see an opportunity, we have to say, you know what, try this. and like it paid off for you. And I think like you're here, you're covering Sundance for the first time in 2023, and you're doing it virtually, which like it's like doing it virtually has its pros, which is like you're staying home in like you're in the warmth. Like it's like Sundance is in Park City, Utah, which is freezing cold snow, like hustling through the snow and trying to get the bus or walking from theater to theater is not easy. I did it in 2020 and it was a lot of work. But the cons is like you're also not around other people. You're not getting the theater experience, and even just the experience of standing in line talking to people. Like I love doing that. I love going to theaters and standing in line and just chatting, like just randomly starting up a conversation with people. So I do hope you get an in-person festival experience, because to me that's so much fun. To me Sundays is more fun than watching movies, but that's just me because I just stopped talking to people. But yeah, but like I'm proud of you for taking that step and like going out and like deciding this is something I want to do.
Yes. Yeah, it was very the one thing that I do know to be true about myself is that I'm a very proactive person. If I see an opportunity and if I see there's some way for me to add skill set, value, input, and I have the bandwidth, I'm more than likely gonna do it. And I'm more than likely gonna go forth in it. And but like you, I do hope probably next year, because I'm transitioning to Los Angeles right as Sundance was happening. So there was just no way logistically I could be in both places at one time. But I do hope next year to go in person and have the full experience.
Yeah, it's fun. And Sundance isn't the only festival. There's like South by Southwest. There's like TIFF. There's other smaller festivals. Like there's why am I drawing a sudden blank on it? There's a festival
as well.
Yes, the ABFF. There's also one that Gina Davis started. An independent film festival that's more female centered. Like it showcases films by and about women. And then there's also like a whole bunch of like Sonoma. There's like the Sonoma Film Festival and all of these small ones. So those are ones you could also look into covering even virtually too, because those are also good opportunities to like network and also get to know more independent filmmakers, because that's a passion of mine, like speaking to independent filmmakers as well. And speaking of independent filmmakers, we'll start a discussion on Magazine Dreams, because this is an independent film, and this is a film that's very small and contained because it just focuses mainly on Killian Matas, which is a character that Johnathan plays. And his character is very isolated. He's very interior, like the story is very much about this world that he has that's very small. And for me, this film, as I said at the beginning, made me physically uncomfortable. But for me, I generally, when I'm having these kind of conversations, especially with critics, I usually like to discuss the cons first and then go into the pros, so that we can kind of quote unquote end on a high note or on a positive note. So for you, like, what were the things that you didn't not necessarily like, but also that you thought that the film could have done a bit better, or that you were just like you were just like, what, this part of the film isn't really working for me, or this part of the story isn't working for me?
I thought first and foremost that it was a phenomenal film. I think, like you, just the unrelenting nature of the things that Killian Matas was going through. I think that was a part for me that like you, made me physically uncomfortable. I was quite literally on edge the entire time. I remember at one point holding my face like this because I was just like, oh my gosh. The way that Jonathan's character it seemed like kept getting hit blow after blow after blow after blow. That to me was probably one thing where it's like, okay, like I get it. We get it. He's spiraling. I understand. Can we get a break? And then the one moment where I thought we were finally going to get a break, it ended up being so crushing when he meets his idol. I thought that was the turning point. And it was, if I was a stick, I would have broken half. Like,
yeah, that scene, I think, out of everything in the film, that was the one that I was just like, come on, like, I'm like, how much more can this character take? And not only for the character, but also the audience. I was like, I was just like, give us a break. Cause like you said, it's unrelenting. Like every time as you think but he doesn't even really have any high moments. Like everything is just, he's constantly getting pulled down. He never has any moments where it feels like where he even gets a win. Like he doesn't have any wins. Like everything is just like a way. And it's just like, it did feel like, and the film is also very long. Like I didn't realize it would be over 2 hours long, and it feels longer than even the 2 hours and 10 minutes runtime. And I think that's one of the things for me where I felt like some of the things that do happen, like there's a scene with police brutality. I was like, do we really need this?
Right.
I'm like, because there was a scene earlier where like he's running and the cop car like just like shines the light on him and he's running, and you can tell like he's trying to keep his cool and he knows he can't react because the very real dangers that Black men and Black people face in America from and violence that they face from police officers. That's enough for us to know that he's in danger. Like we know he's a Black man. You don't even need to have the scenes with the cops. We just know that he's in danger as a Black man. But then to have the actual scene where the physical violence, I was like, my sister was watching with me, and that's when she actually got up and left because she was like, I can't do this film. I can't watch this film anymore because she's like, it's triggering my anxiety. And I related to her to that. Because I actually paused the film, and and that's the beauty also of covering a festival from home, because you can pause a film and like get up and take a breather if you need to. And this film, like I had to like take a breather for me because it was just so much. And that scene, it was just like, did we really need this scene? And I was like, and then there's the scene where he gets beat up by the 4 men. I'm like, again, do we need to have this scene? Do we?
That scene and the scene that followed when he still pressed his way to the competition, it was a lot. It was really a lot. It was just unceasing. Like there was never, like you said, there was no high point at all. And the fact that the one false high point that they put in there was closer to the end of the movie anyway, I was just like, all right, we've had to endure so much. And then we get this false sense of hope, and then it just shatters everything that we have left, our energy, our bandwidth to endure the movie. Like it shattered everything. And I think I actually looked at the time marker because I was like, how much more of this is left? Because it's not that it's a bad film, it's just that there was so much in it that I was waiting for the ending.
Yeah, I think sometimes for some filmmakers, when they have these kind of films where it's depressing in the fact that this character is going through so much, and you feel a lot of sympathy and empathy for him, in particular because of how Johnathan plays the character. But then you're also you're kind of conflicted because he's also very obsessive and in a potentially dangerous way, and he does eventually start to pose a very real danger to people around him because he's, spoiler, bites a gun. And I was just like, so we go from feeling from this character, because he's very awkward and he's very socially isolated from people, and he's obviously neurodivergent. He has a problem interacting with people, and I'm not going to diagnose and say he's autistic or anything like that, but he is clearly neurodivergent, and he struggles with reading people's body language and reading people's facial expressions, and I'm picking up on cues. And like that, a lot of that does engender sympathy in you. And like you can see like bodybuilding for him is a way of like building confidence. But then his evolution as a character starts to become darker and darker and darker. And like people, and like he would be compared to an incel, right? And I feel when filmmakers have these kind of films where they're trying to do very introspective films, and they're trying to do like these character studies on characters, that they get so caught up in like being moody and dark and angsty that they don't realize that for the audience that could be too much, because this is still supposed to be fiction. It's supposed to still be technically entertainment. It's like that's what film is for. Like film, and like sometimes no matter how depressing a story is supposed to be, it's still supposed to be able to have some kind of moments where the audience has a moment to breathe. It's supposed to be able to help us process these moments, and we have like very few of those moments, and like some of those moments only really come like with his grandfather. But they're not even like moments to breathe, because his grandfather, you can tell his grandfather doesn't communicate with him. His grandfather is disabled, and he's been looking after this man from a very young age. And then you realize that the reason he's looking after his grandfather is also because of a traumatic experience. And then it's just like, I literally thought to myself, I'm like, okay, writer, like, come on now. Like, come on. Like, come on.
And the way that information came out was it's such a awkward, just like, golly, guy, like, just golly, like, you would have thought it would reveal itself in a different way, but I guess, to the writer's point, it had to come out that way to further, show how much he was detached from people, detached from his reality. And that was the thing, I think, the detachment from reality, I think, was one of the things that really stood out to me in the way that Johnathan was portraying him, is because he was, for all intents and purposes, delusional in a lot of ways. Especially in those moments where they showed him talking to his counselor, his therapist, and kind of telling her, oh, well, I'm going to be competing. I'm going to be on the cover of a magazine. Me and my girlfriend are going strong. I'm like, you're delusional.
Yes.
But I'm like, it has to be a distraction of sorts, of some sort, or some sort of coping mechanism or something to try to help him, I guess, mentally or subconsciously deal with the reality of the situation, which is he's not where he wants to be, and he's not relating to people in the way that he wants to relate. So it came across very sad. And I thought I knew stress. I thought I knew stress after watching Waves with Kelvin Harrison Jr.
Oh my God, that film is stressful. Oh my God.
I thought I knew stress after watching that movie. I was like, okay, this is top tier. Never again. And then I saw Magazine Dreams, and I was like, I didn't know stress.
It is a lot. It is a lot. Like this, like you see, like the scene where he mentions that traumatic backstory of his, like, and this is also a moment where you're thinking, okay, maybe this is a bright moment in his life. Okay, like he got this girl, and she's very nice, and she's accepted his awkwardness, but then he just says this thing, and he starts to go off on this tangent and this diatribe of his obsession and his delusions of grandeur of being a bodybuilder. And in that moment, I was just thinking, okay, come on, like, I'm like, he can't even have this. No, like he can't even have a date, like just like can the date just also be just a good date, and he have, like, even if nothing worked out afterward, like just let this date be good. No, the writer's like, no, we're gonna ruin this entire thing. I was like, and it's stressful because I think I kind of tuned out a bit in that scene, because I kind of checked out, because the way he just kept talking and talking and talking, I was like, the girl, that was one of the scenes where I was physically uncomfortable, because I was just like, I was getting ready to look up and get up off my sofa, and I looked away, because and I think that's a testament to Jonathan's acting, is that he makes you as the audience react the same way that the characters that are interacting with him feel. We feel awkward the same way. We feel like we're just like, oh, okay, this guy is about to lose it. And you're just like, I don't want to be here when he loses his shit.
Yeah. Definitely 1,000% credit to Johnathan, and a lot of credit to his castmate in that particular scene at the diner, because the way she didn't have to say a thing, but the way her face conveyed her discomfort, and just like, I'm ready to run up out of here, but I don't want to hurt his feelings. So I have to figure out a way to do this kindly. That was very visceral.
Yeah, I'm looking up her name. Let me see, what's her name? I think her name is Haley Bennett, and she's what you would call it. She's a very supporting character. She doesn't have that many scenes in the film, but that scene in the diner was very impressive. Like, she really, and I'm thinking, as women, as soon as we do get into situations with men, and we're just thinking it's like a fight or flight situation, and she's thinking, how do I ease out of this situation with my safety? Like, how do I don't want to trigger this guy and make him and that's the thing. Another thing with this film is, like, there's three female characters. There's a counselor, there's the character Haley plays, and then there's another one that Taylor Page makes. And all three of these women, like, I think as women, as female audience members, we we can relate to these three women because he's big, he's imposing. Like Johnathan gained so much muscle mass for this film, and he's a tall guy.
Mm-hmm.
And in the scenes with these three women, you're thinking they're in potentially physical danger. Like you don't know what will make him snap. You know, like the scene with Taylor, she plays a sex worker, and she's on the bed, and there's this moment she slaps him, most just like,
yeah,
it was just like, girl. I was just like,
yeah. You did not know, like you said, you just didn't know what would trigger him, although it did become a bit more apparent that it seemed like disrespect was kind of like a trigger for him. And when he was met with something that he didn't agree with or that he didn't like, that was kind of a little bit trigger for him. But definitely when Taylor's character slapped him, granted, she didn't do it hard, which I thought was great. But when she slapped him, I was like, all right, he's literally hovering inches away from your face. Your face could be gone because he could do some harm to you. But I thought in that particular scene, I also thought, even though there was definitely the potential for danger, I thought the way Johnathan portrayed his uncomfortableness with women and with intimacy and like relating to women, even though, you know, it was through a sex act, which is still an intimate act, but I thought that was a nice way to show that he was still fearful of the thing that he wanted the most, which was to be connected to someone and to really, you know, have a vulnerable moment with people. Just like I think you mentioned earlier, the scene with him and his grandfather near the end where he's just crying in his grandfather's arms. Like that's the thing that I feel like he was chasing after the entire time. Like he just wanted someone to be there for him, to understand him, to feel him, to see him. And he was searching for that throughout the entire film.
Yeah, he was looking for, I think, not sexual connection, but just like acceptance. And as you said, like for someone to actually see him, because the way that scene with his grandfather, that's right at the end, but the way it's framed, like that's the first time his grandfather is standing and looking directly at him. You know, for all the other scenes, and even some of the other scenes with some of the other characters, they're always off center. No one is looking directly at him. They don't physically see him head on. Like, you know, it's always from some kind of obscured angle. And that scene broke my heart because I was just thinking, like, there's something that's revealed about his health, and I'm just thinking, the fight isn't over. Like the fight for him is now beginning because he now has a new battle with his health that he has to contend with. And I'm just like, this right guy really can't get a break. But at least he now has someone that he can rely on, because before, like as we said, like he's been a captain's grandfather for years from a very young age, and he's been the sole caretaker, and he has had no one really to help him and support him. Like his therapist, like she's trying to help, but also she's a white woman. She's an elderly, she's a more mature white woman. So she still can't relate to him as a Black person. She can't relate to him as a man. She can't relate to him as a person who has to go through life as a Black person, you know, and the challenges that comes with that, and the things that make him afraid, you know. Like we see that while he can be physically violent, but he's also very afraid. Like he's terrified of failing, you know. He's terrified of not being able to care for his grandfather, and like he's terrified of not making connections with people. But his fear comes across as and like in order to protect his fear or mask his fear, he becomes aggressive and rude. Like the things that he does to customers, and like you said, he doesn't like disrespect. Disrespect is a trigger for him. And this is very, very also in the positives now, because these are the things that I really liked about the film. And all of this because Johnathan is the main character. Like Killian is this film. He, like, the magazine dreams are about him. They're his dreams of becoming a cover model for a magazine. But like everything is about him. And the thing that I think that Johnathan does so brilliantly in this film is how he switches personalities very quick. He goes from being shy to being aggressive. He goes from being scared to being suspicious. You know, he goes like from being very quiet and silent to having these explosive moments, especially when he's like flexing, you know, like and I thought the scenes where he's like flexing his muscles and stuff is like, those were kind of heartbreaking for me, because like he even alone and talking to a camera, he can't even connect with the camera, because he's thinking of the people who will be on the other side of the camera watching him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those, and I know as a Johnathan Majors fan for sure, I remember initially seeing the photo for the movie and seeing, the shadow of his abs and his toned legs. And of course we all saw, his body, for lack of better words, in the Men's Health cover that was released a couple months ago. So it's not like we knew he wasn't ripped, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we knew in this one, because he's playing a bodybuilder, we would more than likely see him probably half naked, showing all his abs and muscles and things, which on the surface and initially I was like, oh, well, look at that.
I think a lot of people are going to go into this film and be very surprised. This film is nothing that the picture makes you think it's going to be.
And that's the thing. That's the exact point I was going to get to, is that you think it's going to be one thing when if you just go based off the photo and what you know about the movie, you think it's going to be one thing, but then you watch it, and to your point about him being in front of the camera trying to flex, and even when he does that one competition where he's flexing his muscles for people, what you thought was initially going to be like intriguing starts to become more uncomfortable to watch. And it's just like, I don't like, put your body up. I don't want to see it anymore, because you're doing so much to get it to look like this, to your ultimate detriment. And it's I think the word of the day is uncomfortable, because it became increasingly uncomfortable as every minute of that film went by.
Yeah. And like talking about his body, like the thing that this film made me really think about, and I had the thought about it too, but when I was watching it, like, I think social media has made people become very detached from the people behind the images that we see. And I think using the photo that they did for promotion for this film was very intentional, because people would look at the photo, oh, it's like going to be like a thirst tweet. People are like, oh, Johnathan looks amazing, look at his body, looking, it's all down. And then you're not thinking that this is an actual human being. This is not a person, like people have become very comfortable with saying extremely inappropriate things that I consider borderline or extremely sexual, inappropriate, and this sexual harassment. And they say these things because like people have, especially for celebrities, like that you're thinking, okay, this is a public figure. This is someone we see in film all the time. So I can say this thing about them because they put their bodies on display in their films or in photo shoots, whatever. But the film highlights, like, we don't understand the emotional and mental and physical strain and stress and trauma that these people have to put their bodies through. While Killian is not an actor, he as a bodybuilder, we see that he's taking steroids, that he's taking drugs, and that he's putting his body through an extremely restrictive diet. But then it also creates body dysmorphia, and he has an eating disorder. And I remember I was watching, I'm a fan of like Korean films and Korean music, but I was watching this show. It's like a V Live, and it's like this, like one of the guys was preparing for a photo shoot. And I saw the behind the scenes for the photo shoot. He talked about how he couldn't eat everything that he wanted. Like, even he was already on a restrictive diet as a singer and a performer, but he had to even go on an even more strict diet. And he couldn't drink water. He had to dehydrate for 2 days, because the reason what they don't tell you is like, and he said that what a lot of people don't realize is when you're doing magazine covers or these kind of shoots, they tell you can't drink any liquids, because that's what makes your abdominals pop. That's what makes your muscles more defined, right? And that's why when you see these guys, it's not only Photoshop, but like they don't drink water, because like your body, your skin becomes tighter. And the same thing happens in this film. Like, we see that Killian, he's vomiting, he vomits up food, and he's he's very restrictive in his diet, and he's like pushing his body system, he's damaging his body. And the film made me think about how, like, for actors in particular, and especially in Hollywood now, like what was considered attractive, physically attractive, is to me not attractive, because I don't want to see someone that looks like they can smash me into a wall. Like, that's not attractive to me. Like, you very me. For me, I like muscle guy, but not like super muscular and things. So like for
Yeah.
Killian's body, I don't find his body like sexually or physically attractive. And the interesting thing, and it's something that's pointed out later in the film, is Killian and a judge that he had a very bad interaction with, is like the people judging these men look nothing like them.
Nothing.
Look nothing like them. But you got all these people who aren't bodybuilders, who they are not physically fit, who don't have to put themselves through these strains and these extremely dangerous situations to look like this, judging them and saying your body isn't good enough. And it shows how even these men are very judge very harshly for their own bodies, and what that does to them mentally. And it just made me think of like how I hope there's a discussion with this film after about how Hollywood and how people and how regular people judge actors and actresses for their bodies, because we don't understand the things they have to do for their bodies to look appealing to us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that kind of lends itself to the idea that a lot of people have, that celebs and actors and artists and public figures, I guess, to paint it with a broader stroke, are characters and not people. And I know up until, because I've been writing in entertainment for about 6 years now, I know probably up until I really got more and more into the world of TV and film and music, a lot of those public figures did look like characters. I would see headlines about them. I would, go past it, and, conversation with friends, we bring them up and laugh or talk and things like that. But the older I got and the more involved I got, it just became clearer and clearer. These are not characters. They play characters, but they're not characters themselves. There are real life people who experience real life emotions, who have real life thoughts. And it's unfair to treat them otherwise, and to kind of look at them, like you said, with this unfair lens, that they have to present themselves a certain way, or that they even feel pressured that they have to present themselves a certain way to the public, to other Hollywood executives. And and I think maybe Johnathan mentioned this in one of the interviews he did prior to the film screening, was that, he hoped that the film highlighted the humanity of us all, because as awkward and as rage-filled and as vulnerable and scary as Killian was, he was still a human being. And instead of immediately demonizing him for his anger and his outbursts, you have to take a step back and sort of analyze the fact that, okay, that anger has to come from somewhere. That rage is coming from someplace. His awkwardness and shyness and social anxiety stems from something. And so instead of me, being quick to judge or quick to label him as something, we should probably pause. And even if you can't figure out where it's coming from, because, people aren't just going to open up like that, we should at least pause and take into account the fact that this is another human being who's just unfortunately having a different life experience than we are. And we should respect that much.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's like, remember on Twitter, like we were talking about on Twitter, and I said, literally my very first thought as soon as the film ended was, I hope to God that Johnathan went through therapy after this film, because it could not have been easy to play this character of Killian. Like, he has to do so much, I think, not only just mentally, but like psychically. Like, they're like, doing a character like that has to have some kind of like fundamental impact on the psyche as well as his body. And like, he's been playing these like very intense characters for years. Like, he's doing he had Devotion, which is a war film, but luckily he's in a jumpsuit because he's playing a pilot. But while he's doing that, he's also doing he also did play Kang in the upcoming Ant-Man Quantumania film. But he also did, like, scenes in the Loki series, and then he had to do this, and also in Creed. Like, he's the new antagonist in the new upcoming Creed film directed by what's his name? Michael
B. Jordan.
Yes. Michael B. Jordan. And for some reason, my mind was saying J instead of B. So I was like, I know J's wrong. But yeah, but Michael B. Jordan. So like his body has been going through so much stress and strain for like at least a good number, like at least like 4 or 5 years straight, you know. And I'm just like, I want his next film, his next project to be something like give this man a comedy. Like I just want him to also take a break, because just like I always, and it's just me, I think I'm also just because I'm just a naturally empathetic person. When I watch these kind of films or just shows where people have to play very intense and very dark characters, like they have to do a lot of physical work, I'm always cognizant of the fact that, as you said, these are real people playing characters, but in order to play these characters, they have to go through a lot. And while I enjoy these, and while I may enjoy the performances or whatever, I still have to remind myself at the end of the day, like whatever they had to go through to play these characters would have taken a toll on them. And we, as the audience and people in outside the industry, we don't know what happens once the lights are off and they go home. You know, we don't know what they're going through. And I remember for like, was it for Monsters Ball? Halle Berry said she went through a very like she did Monsters Ball and then she did this other film, Gothica. Like I remember she said in interviews like that film took a lot out of her. Like Gothica in particular took a lot out of her, and she had to do therapy. And there's like a lot of roles where many actors have to do therapy afterwards, because like they have to do basically like mental maintenance, you know. And like this film really just made me think, I hope to God Johnathan went to therapy for this film, because it could not have been easy.
Yeah, I share in that hope as well, because I was actually kind of thinking, you know, just in the last 2 years alone, how much he's had to pivot, like you said, mentally, physically, from one project to another. You know, you go from Lovecraft to The Harder They Fall to Devotion to Ant-Man to Loki to Creed to Magazine. There's just so much pivoting, you know, because you have to, naturally, you're playing so many different characters. And then with Kang in particular, he's playing many characters within a character. Like it's a lot going on. And I think, you know, probably given the fact that he's I think he's a Yale graduate, Yale School of Drama grad. I think him, Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, Brian Tyree Henry, and I think one other person all went to Yale School of Drama, which I think was interesting.
Was it Yale or Juilliard?
I think, yeah, I know for sure it was Yale for Yahya. I really want to say it was Yale for Johnathan, and I think I just read an interview with Brian Tyree Henry, and he said he
was
went to Yale.
So oh no, it was I think it was my guy who played M'Baku Winston Duke that went to Juilliard, I think. I think it was Juilliard that Winston Duke went to, I think.
He might. I know it was a good 4 to 5 of today's hot Black actors that all went to Yale, and I was like, well, what a coincidence.
I know, right?
But I think, given the fact that Johnathan is a Yale alum, and the fact that he is a true thespian, I think he enjoys roles like, you know, like the ones he's gotten, because they challenge him mentally, emotionally, and physically. But like you, I give the brother a rom-com, give him a love interest, make him. I love his role in Last Black Man in San Francisco.
I still have not seen that.
He's very quirky, a little bit oddballish, but which is kind of like Killian in Magazine Dreams, a bit oddballish, but in a more upbeat way, in a more likable way. And I think he plays awkward well, whether it's on the, you know, positive side of the spectrum or negative side. But I think I would like to see him do that a little bit more. Like I said, give him a love interest, give him, you know, make him try to get the girl, like in a good way and not in a weird dinner scene from hell type of way.
You know, and give him a dog or a fish, you know, give him a pet goldfish. But
yeah.
but I completely forgot about Lovecraft Country, because I have fought with that show. Like that show ended up being a very negative experience for me, just like watching it. That I was reviewing it and I couldn't even get past. I watched all the episodes, but I was reviewing and I stopped reviewing it at episode 5. The episode 5 was my last review, because it was just so much for me mentally to like process, having to watch and like process it, to recap it and stuff. It was just like, no, but like, yes.
I never watched Lovecraft. I don't like horror movies, horror films, horror TV shows. I don't like anything. The biggest I'll go to horror is like Jordan Peele type horror or like thriller. That's about it. As much scary stuff as I'm gonna do. So I never got into Lovecraft, but from all the reviews, like you said, that I read and people talking about his performance, I know he did a great job. I don't doubt that he did a good job. I will just never firsthand see it.
Girl, yeah, you save yourself. Like
I will.
It just becomes darker and darker, and I'm like, it's supposed to be horror, but then it's also like it's something based on Lovecraft, who was also racist, and I'm like, this make the things that his character goes through. Like by the end, I wanted to fight the air. I was just like, no, that was also another character where it's just like, come on, like how much more can this guy go through? Yeah. And like again, like, that's something we've been saying about Magazine Dreams. This is just, and I wanted to ask you, like, is there any particular scene in the film that really stood out to you? Whether is I was just gonna say a positive or negative, but I'm like, again, this film doesn't really have any positive scenes. But is there like a scene that really, really stands out to you that defines the film for you?
Ooh. I think, for the sake of being repetitive, I won't. That's the number two. So I think my number one scene would probably have to be the moments after he gets beat up for those four men when they come in the truck and beat him up on the day of his competition. I remember feeling like so excited, like, okay, he's at this competition. Finally, he can get this out of his system. He can go, and then we can be done with this chapter. But the way he got beat up and the way he struggled to get back in the car and sped all the way down to the place and did not clean himself up. Spoiler alert, he didn't clean himself up. Bloody, just, I think that was the moment where I was like, and credit to who, the name escapes me, but whoever did the score in those particular scenes, that was, I know, the moment for me where I was like, I am ready to run up out of here. And then while he was flexing, you could hear the gas from the audience, people in the auditorium, but I think the minute he smiled while he was flexing and his mouth was still full of blood after getting beat up and the camera just kind of stayed on his face, I was like, I'm ready to shut this laptop down. I can't. This is a lot. This is too much. And then again, like I mentioned earlier, the scene after he shadows his bodybuilding idol at the photo shoot, and I knew something was up, and I knew something was gonna happen when he showed him his abs, and he was like, yeah, they're real, like you can touch them. And the way they just lingered on his idol's face as he was looking at Johnathan's character, I was like, no, there's some don't feel right. And sure enough, in the next scene, I was like, you know what? I am about to cry, shake, and throw up. Like, this is so much I didn't expect to happen. I think those two moments were for sure the two scenes where I was like, all right, okay, how much longer do we have with this? Love you, Johnathan. Yeah. Love you, Elijah Bynum. You did a great job, but baby, I'm about to check out.
I'm with you. I'm here looking up because you mentioned the score, and the score is amazing. The composer is Jason Hill, and he's worked on Mindhunter, Love, Death, and Robots. Yeah, like he has a great filmography. Yeah, the score for this film is fantastic, and that scene that you're talking about where he gets in the car, like it's just like this. It feels that music feels very much like it belongs in a horror or a thriller, because it feels very unrelenting. It feels almost like if this was a horror film, like the moment where you're running through the woods, running from the like a serial killer or whatever, because it feels very intense and dark and very unrelenting, and it's very pulse pounding, and it just makes you fear whatever is coming around the corner. So like Jason Hill, I think he did a fantastic job with the score for this film. And like the scene you mentioned, the one with the bodybuilder, like when he meets his bodybuilder, that's one of my top scenes from this film, because it's very much reminiscent of the saying, never meet your heroes. And this is something for Killian, because like the thing with Killian's obsession from the very beginning is that he's been obsessed with this one particular bodybuilder. And he was a bodybuilder that was like in Mr. Universe competition, and he's won like all these awards, and he's been in all these magazine covers. And Killian has his bedroom plastered with posters of this guy. And I thought it was very interesting that it's a white man and not a black bodybuilder, right? I thought it was very interesting that he's obsessed with this white man. And he meets him, and like you just know something's very off-putting about this guy. And what happens afterwards was that just made me, that was one of those scenes where I wanted to hug Killian, because I'm just like, come on. Yeah. And it was so, and I think it's so traumatic. And I think it's something also that's not discussed in society in general, like how men can be victims of sexual encounters. And even if this wouldn't be defined as sexual assault, like the way because Killian is so naive, and he's very isolated, and he's very socially awkward. He doesn't know how to interact with people. Like you can tell this encounter for him has left him scarred, like it's left him mentally scarred, emotionally scarred, because this was never his intention. This isn't what he came there for. And it shows, and it's just showing like how people like Killian, and how men in particular can be victims, whether they realize it or not. And it shows like how people also take advantage of people like Killian. Like this man, from the very beginning, he clocked that Killian is like socially awkward, that he's neurodivergent. He clocks that this is someone he can take advantage of. And like for me, that whole sequence says so much, I think, about not just Killian, but how men as well are conditioned to see certain encounters as everything is sexual. Like you see someone who's a fan, and they come up to you, and like he's just a fan. He's not looking at you as a sexual idol. He doesn't have any sexual feelings towards this man. But this man that Killian has loved and obsessed with for years takes advantage of that. And it talks about power dynamics, and it talks about how even like Killian is physically imposing. He can do damage, like he can beat people, but in this situation, his size means nothing. His size couldn't protect him.
I think that was probably the most, like you said, traumatic, heartbreaking, just like the what's the saying go, the straw that broke the camel's back. I think that was, throughout the film, Killian experienced so many types of assault, right? Mental assaults, emotional assaults, physical assaults. And even though this final assault, in a sense, is not, like you said, it wouldn't traditionally be defined as assault, because we assume that it was a consensual act between the two. But the aftermath clearly shows that even though it was consensual, that doesn't mean that it's without consequence.
Yeah.
Mentally, emotionally, like you can tell he is shook, rocked. And I think for him, like I said, that was the straw that broke his back, and the thing that kind of pushed him over the edge to feel, again, respected. Like, you didn't respect me as a competitor, as someone who admires you, as a human being. You didn't respect this body that I've worked so hard for. I think, once again, it was a trigger, and I think it boils down to disrespect and the non-acknowledgement of his humanity as a person. And like you said, just as a fan, like, I'm a fan of yours. I'm not trying to get anything from you. I want you to know that I exist, and I want you to acknowledge me as a human, but you have perverted that. And now I have to figure out a way to deal with it.
Yeah. And the thought just occurred to me, like, that encounter, I think, also really affects how Killian saw himself, because he's always been trying to get his body to look just like this man, and then you have this person who has the body that he's been idealizing for so many years and that he's been trying to emulate and copy violates him in a way that he would have never ever comprehended before. So there's the whole aspect of you have the body, just the physical body, like treating him in this way, and like that perverts the way that he ends up looking at his own body, because he stops exercising. He doesn't want that body anymore. And I think that's where the writing for that I think that's where Elijah Bynum's writing really shines, and like where it's like it's very subtle. Like he doesn't make anything overt. Like everything that he's like, all of the social commentary, as I would say, is very subtle, and like he creates these situations where it's like, if you really think about it, you're like, he's saying this about like a comment, like he's saying this situation is about drug addiction. This situation is about how people use social media to term other people, like this, like the comments, how people on social media are very fine telling a random stranger to kill themselves just because you don't like a video they post. That's about that. But he's like, this social commentary is about how men can be intimidated by women, and then this situation, like the one I mentioned, is about how some people can become like victims of consensual sexual encounter, but it's the aftermath, as you're saying. That's really the issue. So I think that's where Bynum's writing shines. It's just the film and a bit shorter, and he could have taken us some of those really dark moments. Like we didn't need some of the physically violent moments, because it has a lot of physically violent scenes, and like we could just taken those out. But I think that's where his writing and as a director shines. Like he's very methodical as a director. The film feels very methodical, and like I could see, like if he had like a whole timeline, he's like, this is happening here, and I think that works. But it's just so much to take it. It's a lot.
Yeah, it's just so much, and I think I would definitely agree that we could have wrapped it up in like an hour and a half, like 2 hours. 2 hours worth of this is and again, I think that we're making it clear, but it's not because it was a bad movie that I wish it was shorter. It was just a lot going in it. Like my energy was just, like I think I told you on Twitter, I was up for like at least 2 hours after the fact. Just I couldn't go to sleep. I couldn't lay down. I was literally sitting on the edge of the bed like, wow.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about like, oh my gosh, I hope Killian gets help. Like, I hope he really, I hope the spiral stops here. I'm wondering about people in real life that are like him, that are going through. I just had so many things swirling in my head. I just could not go to sleep until I just was like, girl, go to bed. This is a movie. Just go to bed. But it was a lot. Like I said, I thought I knew stress.
Yeah, this is not a film I would recommend anyone watch before going to bed. I watched this during the day, and like I even after I watched it, I had to go and put on a video with like people cooking food on YouTube. Like that's one of my stress relievers. Like there's these videos on YouTube where I would go to like watch people. I would watch like these Japanese restaurant videos, or you just watch them prepare prepare for the evening service for the morning. Like they go to the market, they make noodles from scratch, and those are like my stress reliever. Some people have like ASMR. For me, I just like watching people cook. So, and I had to do that after this film. I just had to decompress, because I was like, I didn't watch any of the Sundance films until later in the night, because I was just like, I can't watch anything where I have to think. I have to like decompress, and I have to just like let myself settle, because I will be fair. It's like everyone is gonna like this film, and that's fair. Like no one is gonna like every single film, and like everyone is gonna find things that they just see like, you know what, this film doesn't work for me. But I will say, whether you like it or not, just don't watch this film before bed. Just give yourself time to process it, because whether or not you like the film, like one thing about it is Johnathan Majors does such an impressive job with it, and like just his performance alone is a lot to take in. It's a lot to process, like it's like so much.
And it's like, I want to tell people, because I was talking to an editor of mine, and they were asking, what did you think? But, no spoilers, but what did you think? And I was like, I thought it was a tough watch. Like, it's a hard watch. It's not something that, and I hate that I keep bringing this movie up, but that's about the movie that had me that gave me the closest reaction. But it's a lot like Waves. Waves is not a movie that I would just say, what you need to go see, Waves. I would never say that. I just would not. I would not recommend that film. Definitely not to watch at nighttime. But I just would not recommend it because there's just a lot going on. It's very heavy. It sits with you and sits on you, I feel, after you watch it. And the same with Magazine Dreams. But to Kelvin Harrison Jr.'s point, who is the the charge, the leader of stress in Waves, and to Johnathan's point in this movie, the performance is stellar. Mm-hmm. The performance is captivating. The performance is, like you said earlier, a more than likely career-defining role where it's like, okay, I may not tell you to watch it, but I would tell you to watch it just to see how he brought this character to life. Like, that's because I know, like you said, it's divisive. People are going to have a myriad of thoughts. People are going to feel some type of way. And so for that reason, I don't know if I would want to purposely influence someone to like put that much emotional burden on them. Like, I don't know if I want to influence them to do that to themselves, but just for the sake of Johnathan alone, like, I would tell people to go see it, but just be prepared.
For sure. It's because as you were talking, I was thinking like, this is one of those films. So, I feel like watching this film. This is not a film that you're just going to take up a CD, or if you say you're just like, oh, go plug in and watch. No, this is a film where you have to be very aware that it's going to be an intense watch, and that it could be potentially triggering, because there are scenes that reference like eating disorders, as I said, and the physical violences a lot in this scene. Like the Elijah Bynum did not pull back with like portraying violence. Like, punches land, you see the blood spattering, you see the blood, like as you talked about, like when he was doing that, he had in the blood in his teeth, and it's the bruises. Like, also props to the makeup and especially effects departments, because they really did their job with this film. But it's it could be potentially triggering for people. So I like, yeah.
Just with you talking about that, I just remembered the diner scene between him and one of the guys that beat him up. When he catches him, and I just remembered that, and I think I remember the whole scene was crazy. The entire movie is stressful, but that scene in particular, I was like, oh gosh, what are you about to do? And I think the moment that Johnathan, that's how I knew Johnathan has some strength. Like, obviously he's a strong guy, right? But the moment I knew, I was like, okay, this guy has some mental and physical strength, was when he literally hopped over the tables.
Yes.
Across. He went from one side of the restaurant to the other because he hiked across the tables in the booths to land in front of that man. When I saw that, I was like, all right, okay, give the man the award. Like, what? Are you crazy? Like, and I think that was probably purposeful. Like, you had to see him react like that, because like, yo, are you mad? Like, are you?
I know, right? And the thing with that diner scene, like that was like, I was thinking about it. That's also probably one of the more defining moments in that scene, because this is like, he is the lone Black person in this entire diner. I don't recall seeing any other Black characters. Perhaps there were, but like, we were just seeing it's an entire place is filled with white people, and like the man called him an ape, and I'm just like, he is acting, he's emulating the behaviors of like a gorilla, like jumping and being very hulking. And that's also where this is where like Johnathan Majors isn't just like fantastic with delivering lines and also using his face and as an expression, like his physical body language. Like, you can tell, like, this is the scene. He's like, okay, you're gonna call me a name, I'm gonna act like one. Right. And he does it like sprinting across the tables and just like, and with such ease too. Like, his physicality in that scene is amazing. Like, just like, take the physical threat he's posing to these people, just like his physicality in that scene is amazing. And then he just like gets right up in the man's face, and I'm like, Lord Jesus, like, what is happening here? And that poor little white child is terrified.
That was so funny. I was like,
And he's like, your
All right.
daddy's a liar. He's like, your daddy's a liar. Your daddy beating you with a pipe. I'm like, you know what? I actually agree with Killian in this moment because you got these white people that treat black people and people of color like trash.
Mm-hmm.
And then they will go home to their families and out on they say when you were out there threatening somebody, you just went and beat this man with a pipe like 2 hours like the day before. And know you want to act like you're the daddy, best dad in the world. Killian was like, no, I am not gonna let this one slide. And it was actually, I was like, you know what, Killian, I could agree with you in this situation because these white people just get away with too much, too often. And he was like, nah, I have had it. No. And it was just like, okay, I could almost get, can you just like, you gotta call out these white people on their BS in their faces, like let the kids know your dad is a racist. Your dad is a violent abuser. Your dad beat me with a pipe. So shatter that myth.
Whew. Yeah, that was
intense.
It was so intense. And then the way it did, in hindsight, it's coming across comical now, but in the moment when he was like, it's like he would edge himself to the brink of like doing something bad and then like pull himself back and then edge himself there again and then pull himself back. But I think it's a moment where he like finally went back on the other side to the diner. He was like, whoa. And I was like, oh my God.
He's like, who these white people got me? He's like, I'm about to catch a case.
It's funny now, but in the moment I was like, no, he is 3 seconds off your ass. Like,
he's like, these white people, I ain't going to prison for these white people. You can hear this. I am not going to go to prison for these white people. I got to look after my papa. Ooh, these white people testing me, Lord Jesus. And like you said, it's funny now, but in the moment it was intense. But like, no, it's funny. It's just like, whoo, black people, we have that kind of situation. Like, we've all had that situation at least once. Like, whoo, you're like, Lord Jesus, somebody hold it back.
Yeah, got to, because this is about to go left.
Exactly. It's about to go left quick. And like, I'm about to catch a case. Who's gonna post my bill? Call 911 with somebody.
I got kids to raise. I got bills to pay. I can't do this.
Exactly. I got my dog to feed. I can't be going to prison for you. I think we're at like an hour. So we're over and over, but that's okay. But this has been so much fun talking with you, Shanelle. Thank you so much for talking with me.
Of course, this was fun.
It is. Like, I love talking with films with people who love talking about films.
It's so funny because I'm so used to writing about films. Like, I don't, and then like because I work remotely and all my coworkers work remotely, you talk to people, but it's through Slack, it's through, Google Messages or whatever like that. And so I feel like I don't get to always verbally express how I feel about TV and film, even though I'm, constantly on Twitter saying stuff, but it's not the same as, looking at somebody and using your words.
No, it is like, that's one of the reasons I started my podcast, right? Because like I've been having issues with my cognition. So like writing has been difficult, but I also just love talking. And I love talking about films and TVs. I have my sister, but she's like at work throughout the day. And I'm always on Twitter talking to people. And I'm just like, let's talk people. And but I appreciate you taking the time for to talk with me. And I'm actually so happy that you had a good experience with Sundance so far. And it was just occurred to me. This film is probably actually the darkest film that I've seen for Sundance so far. I haven't watched any of the horrors. That was kind of unintentional. Like either the screener, the pass is expired, and they were like, "Oh, it's expired." Oh wow, right. I haven't been able to see any horrors. But so far, this film technically is like a thriller, and like I watched like some really intense dramas, but nothing as intense or dramatic as this for Sundance. But I'm glad that your first Sundance experience has been so good.
Yeah, I'm very, very grateful. I think I've been trying to watch, I love documentaries, so I've been trying to balance watching like films and documentaries before everything goes away. But yeah, I would probably agree this is definitely one of the darker films in the entire canon of the selections this year, because it's a lot. I know we keep saying it, but it's a lot.
It's a lot. I don't think saying it can really it can't. That's how a lot this film is. Like you said, we've been saying a lot, but you really are not prepared for what this film has to offer you. Just like I had no clue that this film would be. And it was just like, I was watching the clock. I'm like, how much more? I'm like, we got 20 more minutes. Like the last 10 minutes of this film felt like a whole 30 minutes in and of itself. But you said documentaries. Like, so before we go, like, what documentaries have you seen?
I watched, I think it's called Going to Mars, the Nikki Giovanni project. Loved it. Love it.
I
I
haven't
love,
seen that one yet.
I really, really love Black women writers and stories about Black women writers, Black women filmmakers. I'm a fan of Black women, about like Nikki said. And then I'm going to watch today the Little Richard I Am Everything documentary. Gonna watch that one. And then there's another one called Invisible Beauty, that I think is about Beth Ann Hardison, one of the first Black supermodels, and I think her journey and how she came onto the scene and broke barriers. I love a good documentary.
No, I've seen both Invisible Beauty and what was the other one you just, and the one about Little Richard. They're both really, really good. And Beth Ann Hardison, I hadn't heard her. I was familiar-ish with her name, but I didn't know everything about her career and everything. But when I watched the documentary, it really showed like just like not only what she's done, but what a lot of other Black models had to go through. Like it, like there's because she's very close friends with Iman and Naomi Campbell. So it talks about how these very famous Black models had so many challenges in the industry too. So that was a really good one. And the one with Little Richard, like I think Lisa Cortez, who's the director, she did a fantastic job highlighting a lot of those points in Little Richard's life that people don't really talk about often. Like how he was completely overlooked for his entire career from the music industry. Like he never won a Grammy. He never he like though he only got like a lifetime achievement award from MTV like back in the day, but he actually never got like actual awards for his music, which is when you think about what he has done for music, like he literally is the king of rock and roll, and this man was never actually recognized by the industry that he's contributed so much about. So I think those two ones are really, really good. I have to see the one with about Nikki Giovanni though. I hope it's still available. I have to see if it's still available on the portal today. Yeah.
She's so funny. She was unexpectedly really funny. And
really?
Some of her interviews and the quips she has, she's really funny. Very no holds bar, tell it like it is. I'm just gonna say it. I'm an older Black woman. I'm gonna just say it like that. That type of personality, that was great.
Beth Ann Hardison is like that too. She's very blunt. Like there's things that she says, like there's something she says, like her son is Kadeem Hardison, which I did not know. Like Kadeem Hardison, like in Living Color and stuff.
A Different World?
That's her son. In Living Color, sorry, not different. In Living Color, Kadeem Hardison, that's her son. I was like, wait a minute.
Wow.
Yeah, I had no idea. I'm like, okay, both of you are out here breaking barriers because like Living Color was like the first. No, I'm doubting myself. A Different World is the show about the college. A Living Color is the music show.
Yeah, that's the comedy show. Yeah.
Right. Yes. It was a Different World. That was the one where they were in college with like Jasmine Guy and stuff. Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that one.
Wow.
Yeah, but it's really good. And she like, she co-directed it too, which is also something I think is really interesting for a Black woman to do to co-direct her own documentary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they Sundance has a lot of good stuff out this year. A lot of good stuff.
Thank you so much for joining me, Shanelle. This was great, and we're gonna have to have another discussion to talk. Yeah, maybe about another Sundance film or another film coming out soon. Ooh, maybe Quantum. I don't know. We'll see. But thank you so much for joining me. And you can tell the people where they can find you and follow you on social media.
You guys can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Shanelle Genai, ShanelleGenai on both platforms.